You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. Today, our guest is someone you're going to recognize, and you're certainly going to recognize his voice. You've seen him and heard him for over 40 years on the news here in Jackson. He is Howard Ballou on the show today.
This episode of the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast is brought to you by the Foundation for Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks.
You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. And today, our guest, someone that I know you've seen and I know you've heard, but you may not know everything about him. We're going to learn as much as we can today. He is lead anchor reporter at WLBT and has been for years here in Jackson, Howard Ballou. Howard, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. This is a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me, too. Your voice is so familiar after all these years being on the news and on our TV sets, in the metro. And, do you hear that? Sometimes you maybe order at a restaurant and somebody hears your voice. They don't even see you, but they hear your voice and know who you are.
It happens a lot, yes. It happens a lot. I've gotten so old now, they don't recognize the face anymore, but they hear the voice.
How many years?
That's right.
How many years for you at WLBT?
Almost 40. Almost 40.
Wow.
Got here in 84. And I guess it has been about 40. Yeah.
Yeah, right at 40 years.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
When you came here to Jackson, did you think you'd be at WLBT in the position that you're in 40 years later?
Of course not. It was an opportunity to reach one of my goals in the business, and that is to become a primary anchor. Mm-hmm. And I thought I'd be here maybe a year, at max 2 years, and then move on to the next horizon. Ended up staying 5 years, and then got a chance to go to a major market, Dallas, Texas, and spent almost 2 years there. And Frank Melton, the late Frank Melton, mm-hmm. who was the CEO at the time, talked me into coming back. I had two other opportunities, but he says, "No, you're coming back here." So my hands were tied. I had to come back.
Yeah, and here we are. And the rest
no
is
regrets.
History.
No regrets. I love Mississippi. I really do. This is a wonderful state. We get beat up a lot and talked about and whatnot, but this is a wonderful state. All three of my sons are born here. So
yeah, outstanding. Well, and what's interesting too is in that amount of time that you've been an anchor and so many years here, the perception on the outside, someone not in the news business, perception is, man, every time I turn the television on, Howard's on TV. That must be all he does. But that's not all you do.
Oh, no.
and there's time for recreation. I saw a recent episode of Mississippi Outdoors TV,
yes, and
you were in a boat fishing. So that's obviously something that has been a hobby for you all these years.
Look, the water and water sports, that's been a favorite since I was a little fella growing up on the Atlantic Ocean in North Carolina, a little town called Elizabeth City. On around where the Outer Banks are, mm-hmm. and we go fishing and crabbing and all that kind of stuff. And so I always wanted to, wherever I located, try to be close to some body of water. And we ended up out in the reservoir area to live. And that's just, there's something therapeutic, about being on the water and doing things outside anyway, in general.
Sure. So from a fishing standpoint, when, upon getting to Jackson and working at WLBT, when did you pick up a rod and reel and begin to fish in this area? Was it pretty much immediately?
I'd have to say pretty much immediately.
Okay.
I found a bass club to join back then, especially when I came back to Mississippi from Dallas, and got a little boat, and we started traveling all over the state and going to neighboring states and fishing for bass, sometimes in little tournaments and whatnot. Yeah. And it's just it's such a pleasant experience. It's a joy to do.
You mentioned growing up on the coast of North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
You were fishing then with a rod and reel in your hand as a kid?
Yeah, yes, rod and reel. Mostly pole fishing back then.
Yeah, sure.
But crabbing a lot. We'd fill up. I had a bicycle with baskets on the side and the back, and we'd fill that joker up with crabs. You use chicken necks or whatever and dip them up out of the salt water and put them in a basket, and that would be dinner.
Yeah, how about that?
Yep.
And I'm curious from there, I know that there's a long gap between kid growing up on the coast of North Carolina to lead anchor at WLBT, but how'd you wind up? What was the story of how you wound up in Mississippi?
It's, this is kind of a nomadic profession. You have to be willing to move on and move up, so to speak.
Okay.
And as the opportunities presented themselves, then I would move on. It typically would, I spent a little time in North and South Carolina. Spent some time in Memphis, Tennessee, because that was the next level of what I was trying to achieve in the profession. And then got the lead anchor job that I'd been seeking all these years here in Jackson. And of course, a lot of us want to see what it's like either at the networks or a top 10 market. And Dallas came open. It was either Dallas or there was a spot in Miami. And Dallas was the one that, picked me up. It was the CBS affiliate at the time, KDFW, and worked there for almost 2 years and back here in Mississippi.
And then wound up back here.
Yep.
When did you know or decide that was what you wanted to do? When did you know, okay, journalism is something I want to go into, reporting, journalistic reporting, anchoring. When did that sort of develop as something that you decided, okay, this is what I'm going to go after?
Yeah, reporting, journalism has been in my blood forever. I think probably watching Walter Cronkite when I was growing up, that I thought, man, he's having a lot of fun doing those things, and initially I was going to see if I could, go into law because I was studying political science and whatnot, but the journalism thing kept cropping back up. I was on a yearbook staff, worked in newspaper, school newspaper and all that kind of thing. And my dad was a writer. He's a professor, did a lot of writing and research and whatnot. And I was always fascinated by that. So, that's where the career guided me, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Relatively recently, within the last 5 to 10 years, you had some reports and dug into some things about the state of Mississippi state parks at that time that kind of opened a lot of eyes. Take me back to that thinking process and that story. I know it was an award-winning story ultimately about the parks, and it led to some change.
Thankful we got a little recognition there. We used to have our station retreats at state parks, Roosevelt, as a matter of fact. And there was a time when you had to book years in advance to get a slot at a Mississippi State Park because they were so popular. But that kind of went away. The condition of the parks started deteriorating, and the upkeep was pretty bad. And it just kind of broke my heart, really. And I saw a report that actually one of my colleagues, Courtney Ann Jackson, did regarding the peer committee reporting on, the state of our parks. It was pretty bad. And I said, well, let's see if we can explore this a little more and find out what's going on and what, is there a solution? We see the problem, what can be done about it? And I started researching what some of our neighboring states were doing with their park system. And the one that really stood out was Arkansas, next door in Arkansas. And they were in the same shape Mississippi's parks were in back in the mid-'90s. Okay. And they appealed to the state lawmakers there and said, hey, guys, this is an embarrassment. And so they allocated funding not only to upgrade the parks, to build new ones, and upgrade the ones they had, but put in state-of-the-art, living spaces and appliances, some with Wi-Fi, some without, just, bring it up to snuff. And they also allocated funds for advertising, and branding and what have you. And lo and behold, a few years later, that became the destination for a lot of people, even from Mississippi. A lot of those Mississippi dollars were going next door. And it was because people, didn't want to deal with rusting appliances and doors that didn't have working locks and all that kind of stuff. It's just, and it wasn't something I wasn't trying to, tear down our parks. Actually, I was hoping that we could spark some kind of way to get folks back involved with Mississippi parks. Because, face it, Mississippi has the best outdoors, everything that you want, hunting, fishing, the whole 9 yards, we've got it right here. Mm-hmm. But folks want a little comfort when they're camping as well.
Right. So, and upkeep and updated.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So that's what led to that. And we did several reports. I think we ended up doing 3, with the third one being a look at what is now being done. And sure enough, we've got some fine facilities out there, coming to fruition.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to have been a small part of that.
Well, and I heard some conversation here just a little bit ago of some folks that said, that was the spark that led to some significant change.
Well, thank you.
It certainly helped. And so that recent report of saying, look where it is now, there's a new branding effort with the parks. Mm-hmm. Some have recently been totally renovated and reopened. Percy Quinn being an example of that.
Right. Percy Quinn, that's amazing.
It's an amazing place.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at it, you have mentioned it a couple of times. This was not something where you were trying to get a pat on the back for uncovering a story. Mm-mm. It was actually near and dear to you. So
absolutely.
How do you feel about it now?
Oh, I feel great. And we continue to do updates when these upgrades are made. We did a follow-up story on Percy Quinn when they reopened that. Mm-hmm. Our family had gone to Mississippi State Parks. Matter of fact, I wish I could find that brochure. There was a brochure years ago, I want to say in the early or mid 90s, where one of the people here at Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks felt that they would put our family on the cover of our brochure. At that time, we only had one son, and my wife and baby boy and I were walking along a park here in the Jackson area. And I wish I could find that brochure.
I'm sure it's out there.
That's how long I've been committed to it, because we've got so much to offer here. Mm-hmm. This is Mississippi has some wonderful outdoors. Yeah. And I'm not trying to sell it, but at the same time, why not appreciate what we have here?
Sure. That little baby boy who was on that picture on that cover, how old is he now?
He's 35.
Okay. And there's 2 others that have come along since then.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So as the parks, have grown over the years, so has the Ballou family.
That's correct. It's time for us to go back and revisit.
Yeah.
I'm like I said, I'm not as young as I used to, but I would still like to go and camp out and do the things in the outdoors, catch fish. Not that much of a hunter, but I wouldn't mind going hunting too.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. You had someone somewhere along the way when you were a little guy up there, and you say Elizabethtown? Is that the
Elizabeth City?
Elizabeth City.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
On the coast of North Carolina. Mm-hmm. That someone that introduced you to the outdoors, that maybe took you fishing for the first time. Your youngins, you've done that with them. Your sons.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We used to
kind of paid it forward.
Yep. They enjoy it as well. We do more boating and hanging out on the water now, and they enjoy that. Mm-hmm. They appreciate it too. They fish. My youngest boy especially. He's Mr. Outdoors. He's out in California right now, but he just sent us a video yesterday of some area near where he lives, and there was a deer walking by, and he says, "Hey, check this out," and he goes out. He's trying his hand at surfing and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it sounds like he loves water like his dad does.
Oh yeah. I think all 3 of them do.
Yeah. You mentioned being in that bass club. Mm-hmm. When did that begin for you? How long ago was that we're talking about?
Oh gosh, that was a while ago. That was 92, 3. Okay. I think we finally got out of it back in towards the end of the 90s.
Okay.
But we did it for a long time.
And those tournaments, did you ever win any?
I did. I won one. I won the what do they call it? The fruit jar or whatever.
Yeah, the fruit jar at the end of the tournament.
Right. Yeah. I won that one. So I was proud of that. But nothing big and fabulous, and none of those big bass tournaments.
Yeah. What's what biggest trophy bass maybe that you've ever caught?
Well, I've got one on the wall. I think it topped out at about 8 pounds. It wasn't that big.
Come on now, 8 pounds is pretty big.
That's pretty. Oh yeah, I was proud of it. Yeah,
Shoot,
we had to wrestle
too.
that joker in the boat, but we put him on the wall.
That's great. That's great. I saw the television show Mississippi Outdoors that you got to be a part of at Simpson County Lake.
Oh yeah,
that looked like a fantastic day of fishing for you.
Oh man, I'd love to do that again. That was so much fun. And
was there any?
Right.
You're used to sitting in front of a camera, okay, and you're used to cameras pointed at you. What about fishing? When you get that rod and reel in your hand, there's a camera in the boat. Is that any different than the?
Not really. I mean, I'm so focused on seeing if I can land that big lunker, or that big hog, as we call it. That the camera doesn't bother me, And Scooter did a wonderful job shooting it and editing it. And he showed me a trick or two with putting the camera down in the water and watching that thing come up to the boat and all that kind of stuff. And so it was just a fun experience all the way around.
Sure. That particular day, was it a long day? Were y'all out there kind of all day, or was it a half day?
I think it was more of a half day.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't all day. It seems like I had to get back to work too.
Well, see, that's what I was going to say, Howard. Yeah, a lot of people look at you and think, how does Howard Ballou have time to do things like fishing and hobbies? How do you find time for that?
You got to make time.
Okay.
You got to, that. I mean, it's good for all of our mental health to make time to do some fun things.
Sure.
We got to work. We're going to do that, but it's good to get out there and have some fun.
Yeah. So 40 years in the TV world, how much longer?
I don't know. As long as the good Lord says, "Hey, you can still do this," and then I'll still do it. I'm really having a lot of fun with that too. I enjoy what I do. Especially when the stories that we cover make a difference in people's lives. And so that's a joy. But, I know at some point we're going to have to turn it over to the young folks, and that's not a problem. I think we have a great team, and there are a lot of young kids at WLBT that I feel confident we can hand it over to, and they're going to carry on the winning ways of Channel 3.
Have you ever taken Walt Grayson fishing?
I have not. I sure haven't.
I've always wondered if he does such a great job on those shows, but I've always wondered if he would pick up a fishing pole and maybe catch one. Or
He might. I wouldn't doubt it one bit. Now he's with the competitor station now.
Oh, okay.
We're still friends.
Yeah, still friends. That's another thing too, Howard. I would guess that over the years, there's a lot of turnover. In television, it's almost like, in sports, you look at coaching, there's a lot of turnover.
Yeah, sure.
Those relationships apparently last, though. You stay
sure.
in touch with people that you've worked with.
Yeah, we do. And, people move on, like I said, to get better positions. Some leave here and go to larger markets because they're looking for, a better position, better paycheck, or what have you. Mm-hmm. And so I hear from folks that I've worked with over the years from time to time. We've had people go to major markets. We've had a couple go to the network level, and I still hear from them from time to time.
Sure. What's your favorite place around here to go fishing?
Oh, man. That's a tough one. Look, that Simpson County Lake, man, that was a good one.
That won you over that particular day, then?
Yep. I like going back in the Pelahatchie Bay and upriver. There are different little jetties and oxbow lakes and whatnot.
Yeah.
That you can go in there, and especially where they got a lot of lily pads.
Yeah, sure. I was going to say, from a bass fishing standpoint, if you had to choose your favorite way to catch a bass, top water, maybe throwing a crankbait, spinner bait.
I'm big on that worm, the Carolina worm, and I do like the spinner bait and frogs as well. I love to see those bass come up there and attack them. You know how mean bass can be there.
Right. And especially, you mentioned lily pads, and like Ross Barnett is like a frog fisherman's heaven right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can skip those little frogs across the lily pads, and all of a sudden They come up there and suck down the whole lily pad, and you got yourself a nice sized fish there.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not surprised either that a guy from North Carolina chose the Carolina rig.
Well,
No bias.
Of course not. But just that worm, I love that tug too. You dance a worm along the bottom or the middle, what have you, and then all of a sudden, bam! You get a good strike there.
Yeah. You touched on this earlier, Howard. You said sometimes Mississippi can get a bad rap from people when you talk about perception on the outside.
Right.
And in your line of work, I would think you've had a lot of interaction with people all over the country in different walks of life. What do you say to those people to get them to kind of truly understand what a special place it is, especially for an outdoorsman, and in terms of activities available to people in Mississippi?
I just tell them to, come give it a try. Come spend set a spell with us, and spend a few days and see what it's all about rather than listening to what somebody else says, experience it for yourself.
Yeah.
There are genuinely a lot of good people here and a lot of good things to do. If you're into outdoor activity, even if you're not, there's still a lot of, we got some good museums, just a lot of good things to do in this state. Mm-hmm. I'm sure where you're from, you get a lot of folks going to see where Elvis lived.
Right.
So it's just, there are a lot of good things here. And I say, just come experience it for yourself.
That's great advice. Mm-hmm. Howard, it's a real pleasure to get to talk to you face to face and hear your voice.
Thank you, sir.
Talk fishing, and maybe we get to go together one of these days.
Man, I'm looking forward to it. You say there's some good places up there. You just let me know.
Maybe when it cools off, we go.
Right.
That's great. Howard, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Yep. He is Howard Ballou, fisherman and news anchor here on the show today. Thanks for listening. We'll see you outdoors.